Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming to this presentation where we're going to be talking about 16 steps to affirmative action. Go to the next slide. I'm going to briefly introduce Fedsprout. We are a consulting firm helping organizations navigate the government funding landscape. We work with businesses, universities, utilities, and manufacturers, helping them with guiding around strategies for getting grant opportunities, helping write proposals, managing grants, and helping with community benefits planning. Go to the next slide. I'm going to introduce our speaker today. Amber Smith is a civil rights professional at Fedsprout with over 10 years of experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion compliance. She's been involved in high-profile state and federally funded projects at the local level worth more than $10 billion. And she's applied her skills in policy analysis, compliance monitoring, and small business development across these projects. Her work has helped ensure that these projects meet federal regulations and achieve their DEI goals, driving successful outcomes. And I'm going to hand it over to Amber to start the presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are delighted to have you. Today, we're going to cover the following. So today, we're going to go over some key goals for the presentation, things that we hope that you take away with you today in terms of getting started or even improving your affirmative action implementation steps. We're going to go over the 16 steps in detail. And with that, we're going to give you some successful examples of what's been very successful on some of the implementation and past projects that I've done in the past. And with that, we're going to go on to talk a little bit about some resources that can help you get started. And then from there, we'll cover some key performance indicators that basically shows you that you're on the right path and the right start to implement affirmative action. With that, we'll wrap up the presentation with some key takeaways that we hope you get from the presentation. And of course, at the end, we're going to open it up for questions and answers. So we'll start here. So today, we expect that this information will do the following. We expect that it's going to help you to be audit ready for OFCCP. We expect that this is going to help reduce and or eliminate any potential for litigation like lawsuits and things like that. We believe that this is really going to help you develop your internal processes and procedures when it comes to affirmative action. We believe that with the information you'll receive today, that you'll be able to even obtain some future rewards and contracts on other projects because of your outstanding implementation of these processes. And we believe that as you do these steps and everything like that, we believe that you'll build even meaningful partnerships to the point where you'll be able to collaborate on future projects with other companies. And I've seen this before in my past in doing compliance work for years. So we can definitely share some examples with that with you. Now, these are the 16 steps of affirmative action. And on the next page, what we did was break them down to 3 different components and categories. So the first one we'll talk about today is recruitment. The next one is going to be equal employment opportunity. And then the next one will be retention. Okay, so here are your steps for recruitment. Steps 1 through 4 and then 16. You want to recruit your women and minorities from community, schools, and trade organizations. You want to encourage your employees to do the same. You want to make sure that you track your recruitment sources. You want to track applicant progress, and you want to make sure that you document your solicitations that you receive from both minority and female contractors. Now, we want to start off with something positive. So here's the first example. This example is out of the city of Denver County Airport, and this is actually the prime contractor in this particular project was Hensel Phelps. So this is a project that I've worked on as a compliance administrator for the city and county of Denver. So this is a pretty substantial airport project. So it's $2 billion excess. And the concept of this was Phil Washington. He's the CEO of the Denver International Airport. And right now, currently, they have over 75 million passengers that frequent the airport right now. So his goal is to get us up to about 100 million passengers per year. And with this, they decided to expand the airport to make it a more user-friendly experience. So let's be honest, sometimes traveling could be very daunting and scary at times. So what they wanted to do is make a family environment, a family-friendly environment where they have more concessions, they have more stops, they have different types of activities that families can enjoy while they're waiting for their flights. So here are some of the positive things that they did on this particular project for recruitment. So what they wanted to do is get out the word about these RFPs that they're doing for the expansion project. So there's so much work involved. So what they first wanted to do is present information about the RFPs. So what they did was they invited all kind of contractors, those from the energy realm, from the construction realm, for transportation. They invited them to set up their own booths at this RFP opportunity at the meet and greet, so they can give information to others about about their companies, because they wanted to accomplish a few things. They wanted to first be a part of the RFP opportunities, and then what they also wanted to do is recruit for employees as well during this time. So they did that, and then what the city did, they presented RFP opportunities to the community, to everyone that attended. And what they tried to do, they did a good job of really breaking down the RFP opportunities into smaller contractable pieces of work, so that everyone could take a piece, have a piece of the pie, essentially. And what they did at the end was allow time for networking, so contractors can meet with other contractors, job applicants can meet with some of the representatives of the city, of some of these prime contractors. And as a result of that, they made sure that they tracked and recorded all of their efforts to prove that they're demonstrating affirmative action. As a result, teaming agreements were actually birthed as a result of this, many teaming agreements. And then there was even some job applicants that got employment. And one of the significant things about the teaming agreements was, when I was actually at the airport, I was actually responsible for reviewing some of these RFP opportunities to make sure they were in compliance with the standards. And some of the RFP opportunities that I actually reviewed were actually a result of some of these teaming agreements. So I thought that was really cool. And this is something that was very positive steps that they've taken at the airport. Now, as we get more into recruitment, these are the three things you want to remember. You want to remember to recruit, to incentivize, and to track your efforts. And if you do that, you will definitely see growth in your processes. Now, let's go a little deeper into this. Outreach. So one of the easiest things you could do to implement recruitment is do outreach activities. And one of the easiest ways that you can do this is hire a community engagement team. So think about what you have going on in your company now. Do you have a community engagement team? Do you have a public relations team? Do you have a team that can help you do some of these things? If you have a team already, great, employ them to do this. But if not, you can also employ people that actually come with this type of background. And I've seen this happen numerous times, where people, would join the company and they would be able to take part in some of these activities. And what you can hire this team to do, you can have them help set up job fairs, hiring events, and things like this. And in terms of partnership, you want to make sure that you work with your community. Work with some of your small and community-based organizations, because they really want to help. They really want to help bring employees, and they want to help people get employed. So they can actually refer some people to you, actually. And along with that, you want to work with your unions, other agencies that you interact with. You want to work with headhunters if you need to. They definitely want to send you referrals, things like this. And one of the steps that I believe is a very innovative step that I haven't seen too often in practice, but this is something you should really consider doing. Partner with your high schools and colleges, and I'll tell you why. With your high schools, you can partner with them in terms of helping them get set up with jobs, internship opportunities, because a couple of things are true. Number one, you might have some high school students that know they want to go to college and they want to learn more about the field that they want to enter in. So this is very helpful for high school students, as well as sometimes you might have some high school students that, they know that college is really not for them. Maybe they may not be able to afford it, or maybe they just want to be done with school and they just want to land a good job. So what you can actually do is, as I talk about setting up job fairs and hiring events, you can also contact high schools and partner with them in order to make this happen. College is another thing. Sometimes you have college students that want to jump into a career, but they don't want to do it, right after college. They want to start even while in their college. So what you can do is partner with some of these schools to develop some internship opportunities. I'll use myself as an example. So I've been doing legal work for 10 some years, but even before then, my undergraduate degrees were actually in mechanical engineering and mathematics. So a part of graduation, the requirement was to have at least 20 hours of internship experience. So I would have really appreciated a program like this, because the internships I did were pretty cool, but something like this was more targeted toward what could have been more targeted to what I would have wanted to do in terms of my specialty. So that's why I say even partner with the colleges, especially considering developing an internship program, would be a very innovative step that I don't believe a lot of companies are doing. That could put you at cutting edge for sure. And everything you do, you're going to hear me talk about this throughout the presentation. You want to track everything you do. So you want to track all of your demographical information. You want to track the type of positions that you're, trying to create with these internship opportunities, in the number of applicants, because This is really going to help you demonstrate the fact that you're adherent to affirmative action. This is going to really prove that your company is very non-discriminatory, and could be a really, really positive step for the federal audits that you'll receive. A huge step. And what you do in terms of even making sure that there's no discrimination, monitor your progress, monitor everything. But even in terms of who you hire and reject for opportunities, you want to track this. So another innovative step that you could take is actually developing a score rubric. So when you have job interviews, you know how you have a metric in which you measure your applicants. But even you can take it a little step further. So you want to develop a selection process for these candidates, and then even track the reasoning for rejection so that you can clearly demonstrate that there's no discrimination in your practices and procedures. And the same could go with contracting. When you receive different RFP opportunities and things of this nature, you definitely want to document the same type of thing. You can even use some of the recruitment efforts as well with contractors. But when you get contractors in, track their demographics, their information, the scope of work that they're doing, or they're hoping to do, the contract value that you're hoping to contract them out for, their utilization, if you have current contractors right now. So these are the steps for recruitment. And now we're going to talk a little about EEO. So what is EEO? It's equal employment opportunity. What is it? It's a law. It's definitely required. And basically, it protects employees from workforce discrimination, which is hugely important. In the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, OFCCP, really the agency that developed these 16 steps, they basically oversee affirmative action compliance for federally funded projects for federally contracted businesses. Just to give you a little overview of what they do in terms of EEO. Now, here's the steps here. So you basically want to notify this office of OFCCP if any part of your EEO policies that you're going to develop happens to conflict with any policies that the unions might have. You want to make sure that for whatever EEO policy you do, you just construct, sorry, you want to make sure you disseminate it externally to everyone, to partners and everything. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You want to make sure that you share this policy with your unions and training programs. And you want to make sure that you review these obligations with all employees that are involved in managerial decisions in terms of who's hired, who's fired, and things like this. And you want to make sure you review them annually as well. To dig a little deeper, so in terms of notifying the OFCCP, one of the things that I would really suggest, even before you notify them, in my experience in compliance, sometimes things can be resolved by a simple discussion because there might be some parts that might be misunderstood. So I would even speak to the unions before you even notify OFCCP to see if there's any part of the policies that might, you guys might be able to discuss and might be able to be mitigated. But if not, if you do notify the OFCCP, I would come from the perspective of, hey, this is what we got going on. This is our policies that we developed. And what are your thoughts about that? Because the offices, I know from the federal offices I've dealt with in the past, they're always very happy to find out that there's contractors that want to learn. They're always very happy to answer any questions. So that would be a step there you should consider. And in terms of disseminating this policy, you want to make sure that it's in all of your public-facing media, information, your literature. And the easiest way to really do this is by a company website. Put your policy there to circulate it. In terms of disseminating with unions and training programs, you could give them that information as well, the policy, and make sure that you review with your employees once a year. And make sure that you post it in like a workplace where everyone can see it. It can be visible at all times for your employees. And what you want to do in terms of revisiting and reviewing your policies, you want to do this with decision makers. So again, your supervisory staff, those that have anything to do with whether or not an employee is retained at a company or hired or even fired. You want to definitely make sure that you're reviewing these policies with them to make sure that they're not doing any type of unintended discrimination. And of course, part of annual reviews, every employee gets an annual review. So you want to make sure that in addition to reviewing these policies in your annual performance reviews with your employees, make sure you certainly do this with your supervisors as well, for sure. And now, last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about retention. So you have some steps here. You develop your on-the-job training opportunities. Make sure that you evaluate your promotion opportunities for women and minorities. Make sure that you're always ensuring that your workplace is harassment free. You want to make sure that you conform to the standards of OFCCP. You want to make sure that at all times you're monitoring your personal practices for any unintended discriminatory effects. And of course, with that, make sure that you also ensure non-segregated facilities. digging a little bit into this. Now, another example I want to give you, and this is one that's near and dear to my heart because this is a project I worked on. And I went from the world of being a compliance manager to being a consultant and legal analyst. So on this particular project, the I-5 Rose Corridor project, this is a project that basically helped repair the I-5 corridor that goes from Washington to Oregon. And the real significant thing about this particular project is that during a time when the highway was first built, this is a place where basically there were a lot of displacement of families, of minority families that was occurring during that time. So this improvement project here is not just for the purpose of improving the highway corridor, but it's also for providing restorative justice for families in the community at large because of what happened. So this particular contractor, Raymore Construction, they are a powerhouse when it comes to equity and diversity and inclusion. Number one, this company employs over 80% of its workforce as minority and women employees. And they provide some awesome supportive services. They provide childcare, transportation assistance, which is very, very important for those that are single parents, for those that may not be able to arrange childcare, and those that might be economically disadvantaged, may not be able to get to work and things like this. So this is very helpful for their success. Even those that are formerly incarcerated, sometimes getting a job can be very challenging. So they help with the services, getting them up to speed. They hire them. They provide them clothing, uniform, equipment, which could be expensive, like boots could be very expensive. They give them training as well. So for those that have been in prison for a while and, they need some basic skills to kind of get up to par, they help with that as well. And they also work with the at-risk youth in the community in Portland. So they do a lot of internship programs like I talked about earlier. The high schools, they work with high schools, colleges, they do a lot of that type of thing as well. And what I really, really respect about this company, so when I was a compliance analyst or legal analyst in this company, I had the pleasure of reviewing their diversity plan. So before they were selected as a major prime contractor on this project, I had a responsibility of reviewing their diversity plan. I had to review it in the lens of the law in terms of federal requirements, in terms of the requirements associated with the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. I had to really review it, an extensive review. So once I finished my review of it, I disseminated it to the Oregon Department of Transportation for their review and, where their comments are. So then when I had different suggestions for improvement, they implemented those suggestions of improvement. And also a part of this plan, it was really cool to see because they were already implementing some of the things that they had in their plan. So that let me know that they were really on the right path and they were really trying to do the right thing. And as a result of their hard work and everything they've done, they actually were selected on this project as one of the major prime contractors as a joint venture partner. And when you're talking $6 billion in a project, that's a lot of money. They had at least $300 million contracted to them just to do the work. So that's a huge success story for a minority contractor that started off small. And one other situation I want to tell you too real fast is one of their employees, I know him personally. He's worked for the company for 10 some years, but he was formerly incarcerated. He was incarcerated for quite some time. He got out and he wanted to change his life. So he worked up his way up from being a general, employee, like a general laborer, and then he became a foreman. And over time, I would say about 5 months ago, he started his campaign for city council in Portland. So that's huge. I definitely wanted to share that with you all. Now, in terms of these steps, let's talk about what you can do. So investment is very important. As you can see with Raymore Construction, they really invested in their employees. So you provide opportunities for employment. So as you do that, you want to make sure that you document everything. You document your demographics. Look at how many employees you got applying for these positions. Look at the positions that you're applying for in their demographics. This right here will also show non-discrimination in your processes. And what you want to do is, like Raymore Construction, encourage some employee managerial mentorship opportunities because this could really help employees become inspired. They could partner with a manager, ask them questions, ask the managers, what can I do to qualify for some of these positions? Very positive step. You would invest in professional development of employees. So, of course, you have your on-the-job training programs you could develop. I would even say for those that aspire to become engineers, like I was back in the past, you might consider paying for some of their membership fees if you decide to. For instance, I was a member of National Society of Black Engineers. I was a member of American Society of Mechanical Engineers and also Society of Women Engineers. So those fees can be kind of steep. So if you want to help them with those fees, that could be very helpful to someone. And also, if you have engineers that you're going to be interfacing with, maybe help them out with their engineering training, maybe PE, professional engineer licensing could be something very helpful to do. And of course, like we talked about, Raymore, provide some supportive services as you can for your company, as you can financially. Make sure you can provide those type of services. And of course, when we talk about advocacy, really protecting everyone's rights, I would definitely say this is an important step here to make sure that you station a female and male person on site. And I'll tell you why. In my past, I've done numerous investigations, down to fraud investigations, down to prompt payment, a lot of different investigations, and also the investigations of EEO related things. So I noticed when I did some of these interviews, sometimes when you go to the project site, you have employees that sometimes will open up to you if things are happening, especially if their pay is being docked unfairly or things like that. But then sometimes you have employees that are very scared to open up because they fear retaliation. So I say this is very important because that project liaison that you put on site, this person can really watch what's going on. And sometimes the employee might open up to them and might feel comfortable speaking with them about things that are happening. And if you have situations, where there's allegations of discrimination, things of that nature, they could be fact finders. They can help a part of, collecting initial information, taking out the reports, things like this that you'll definitely need in your investigation. And if you have situations where they're not comfortable opening up, I would also say taking it a step further and creating some anonymous surveys where employees can fill those out. And you have to make sure that when you do that, that there's no type of identifying information about the employee, their name, even a position, so that you don't want the responses to be tracked back to them. This is really a thing you can do to take a temperature check of your company to make sure that there's no hidden discrimination there. And like anything I've talked about today, you want to document everything. Document your processes, your investigations, everything. You want to make sure you document these type of things. Now, let's talk about how you can get started with doing your plan and doing your implementation of affirmative action. So, of course, you want to develop your processes and procedures. When it comes to outreach, think about a timeline of events. What are some of the things you want to do to bring the word about what you're trying to do in your company and how you want people to be employed? Think about your timeline. What type of staff do you want to employ a part of this or retain a part of this? What are some of the penalties if there's any violations of EEO? What are some of the roles and responsibilities you have for everyone? What is your time and budget? And remember, when it comes to your time and budget, the federal government does have requirements in terms of what you have to do. However, they don't want you to go bankrupt over these requirements. So understand that they want you to do something that's going to be feasible within your plan as well. Look at key performance indicators. What are some of the things that we know we're doing or clues that we're doing the right thing, which we'll talk about in a moment here. And also, what are some of the tracking software that would be helpful for us tracking some of these demographics? And we'll talk about a few here, LCB Tracker and Affinity, ones that are very helpful that I've seen in the past that were pretty cool to use. So LCB Tracker, from my experience in contract compliance, especially in the construction industry, this is the main one that's used. And it's a great software. Number one, it tracks your certified payroll. So in the last presentation, we talked about Davis-Bacon. So excuse me, this particular software, it helps you to submit your certified payroll reports. And it also audits those reports to make sure they're correct, that they're accurate. Excuse me, their capability. So of course they track even workforce stuff. So not only just certified payroll, but they track your workforce and they make sure that they're in compliance with the Davis-Bacon stuff. And basically, if you are not familiar with the software and you need some help to get started, I know they do provide trainings and webinars and things like that. And they're always available to answer any questions. Now, this software, Affirmative, is relatively new that I've learned of, but it's a great software. So if you find yourself in a position where you need help actually building your affirmative action plans, it's not just the software, but it's also a team of specialists and teams of analysts as well that can help you get started with your plans. They can help you prepare those OFCCP reports, those audits that you'll need. They track all kinds of things. They track demographical information, workforce, and they also take a look at your company as a whole. Excuse me. They do like a whole analysis of your company. They look at your hiring practices, your decisions, selection processes. They really help to really take a fine tooth comb of your processes to see if they are, in compliance with OFCCP, or if they might have any type of areas where there could be a little discrimination that might need to be refined. So really great team there. And Pricing varies, so I would definitely contact them with any further questions, and we definitely will have the contact information available for you, the websites that you can visit in the next few slides here. So KPIs, how do you know that you're on the right path? This is something I love looking at. Audit findings. Do you notice that when you are doing investigations, do you notice that you're having more audit findings than usual? Are you noticing that they're going down? When you have the audit findings, do you know that are they open? Are they closed? Are they resolved? What type of outcomes? Things like this will let you know if you're on the right path in terms of implementing affirmative action. Let's look at numerical data. Are you noticing positive trend in employee growth? Are you noticing that you're getting more contracting opportunities or contracting more work out to contractors? For investigations, are you noticing that you're having less and less and less investigations, if any at all, of misconduct and discrimination? Engagement. When you have these events, do you have a huge turnout in these events? Do you have a huge interest in people coming and learning about your opportunities, whether it's employment or contracting, things like that? And are you hearing good feedback? Are you hearing from your internal staff? Are you hearing from partners good things about your processes? These are really key indicators to let you know if you're on the right path or if things need to be revised in terms of your policies and procedures. Now, if you don't take away anything from the presentation today, we hope you take away the following. Make sure you create your policies and procedures. Make sure you collaborate with your internal and external teams and partners to develop effective strategies, because the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. In the same regard, it can take a village to help develop really good processes and procedures. Build your meaningful partnerships with your workforce, union, community agencies. Another piece of little bit of information about myself. 20 years ago, I served in the United States Army National Guard in Roswell, New Mexico, and I was going to be commissioned as a second lieutenant. So during the camps that I went to in order to get to that place, I remember that the non-commissioned officers in my unit, they always said, you want to partner with everyone. You want to really collaborate with everyone, especially your frontline soldiers, because those are the ones that are going to protect you in battle. Never forgotten that. So for me, collaboration is very important. Engagement is very important, because if you engage with everyone, not only can they help you build your processes and things like this, but they can help protect you as well from things that you may not see. You have more than one eyes looking at something. It can help you protect you in other areas that you weren't expecting. So you definitely want to make sure you engage with people. You want to always protect and invest in your employees. You want to keep documentation of everything, like I've told you before, and you want to make sure that you disseminate this information on anything public facing. And the easiest way you can do this is on your website. Now, understand this. Yes, compliance can be a little scary and daunting and unfamiliar at times. I know. But with the right planning, collaboration, and partnerships, it is completely attainable. So feel encouraged. Feel encouraged. And not only are you going to be successful in implementing these steps, but you're really going to help grow communities and businesses along with yourself. It really can really make a difference in someone's life and make a difference in a community, even as you're doing processes like this. So here's some additional resources. Here's the OFCCP checklist. It has the steps that we talked about, but it also has other tips and tools that you can use in terms of implementing affirmative action. There's information about SCB tracker and also Affirmative as well. So now at this point, I'm going to pass over the stage to Elap, who's going to tell you a little bit about Fedsprout and how we can help you out in this quest of implementing affirmative action.
Thank you, Amber. So, we have a lot of experience here at Fedsprout with grant management, and we definitely love to help you if you need help with assessing your current policies and practices relating to affirmative action. If you need any guidance on how to develop enhanced processes and use best practices, we have a community engagement team that can help design and help you strategize on your efforts for outreach to make sure you're using tactics and strategies for affirmative action compliance. Also monitoring reporting of affirmative action, EEO, and contracting. And then we have a lot of expertise in with utilities and industries on compliance that we can guide you on. And lastly, we can help with any compiling of federal audit related reports. With that, we are pretty much done with this presentation. We will, of course, make sure you have a copy of these slides, and I believe you will be getting a copy of the webinar recording. And now we're just going to open up to any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, both Olaf and Amber. That was some great examples for how to meet each of those. I love that you had like examples listed in your presentation because it really got me thinking about things here too. So it's very helpful. And thank you, Amber, for your service. We greatly appreciate your service. We did have a question in the chat. About is affirmative action only for women and minorities or disabled combat veterans or veterans, in general included in that?
Everyone. So that's yes for everyone. Your veterans, those with disabilities, religion, extends to everyone.
Okay, great. And Jason asks, my question might be self-serving to understand who is all involved with affirmative action.
Oh, no,
So,
no worries, everyone. So, of course, you have your legal team, you have your managerial team, you have your employees, everyone. So, when it comes to building processes and procedures, you definitely want to start with the managerial level in terms of drafting things, someone that can look at the laws of your state, look at the federal laws, things like this, but everyone's involved, So, as a managerial team, you develop your processes and procedures for employees, you disseminate that to them, you abreast them of the requirements and things like that. So, everyone's involved, but I put legal on there as well. I also have your legal team look over things as well to keep you all safe and everything.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Was there any other questions from anyone?
I had a couple. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let's see. Hi. It seems like my organization has many of these processes already in place, but Amber, I'm curious, what areas in your experience do you find that people don't have, or, we would need to be aware of to make sure we're in compliance with the 16 steps I wrote down, but where's the weak points typically?
From my experience, I would say in terms of how investigations are handled. So sometimes when there's investigations that happen, sometimes there's not enough documentation. And I will say this in EEO, even in contracting, sometimes when there's cases that have arrived that I've had to, investigate and I've had to come down with certain rulings, I've noticed that sometimes enough investigations have not been done. Like, number one, I've noticed some situations where confidentiality was compromised. So that's a thing you definitely want to make sure you don't do, because I've seen the situations where there's retaliation that can happen, which can open up to lawsuits and things like this. So that's something the investigative processes sometimes need to be very strong and very detailed, and steps that are taken need to be very detailed. That's one of the biggest things I've noticed that have been problematic in the past and everything like that. So I hope that doesn't help answer the question.
It does. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Carla, you said you had a question?
Yeah, I had just a couple I jotted down right quick. So thank you so much, Amber. First of all, I mean, this was really helpful. A couple of things. So OFCCP, we have been told by a couple of different resources who shall remain nameless at this point, that we don't have to comply with OFCCP for financial assistance being grants. Now, contracts go through OFCCP, but grants are a little bit different animal. Is that correct?
So I know that OFCCP, they do monitor and look over the affirmative action processes. Now, whether you guys have certain requirements, that might be a little different, but as a whole, they do administer and monitor these type of things. So even if you may not necessarily have to directly report to the OFCCP, their steps are very important because there's audits that are going to happen and things of this nature. So the requirements as a whole, the 16 steps, even though you might not report directly to OFCCP, they do administer and overlook the civil rights type of things and the compliance type of things as well. So the steps that you've learned today are basically steps that you'll need to do at some point, different ones, but as an umbrella of affirmative action, these are definitely some things that at some point will be somewhat required, will definitely be required at some point. So if I were you, even though if you don't and I've seen different situations like this, even a contractor where the companies may not have to report to certain agencies, but if they do some of the steps, it does help safeguard them in audits and things like this. And not only does it help you meet your basic affirmative action requirements, but it helps you exceed it. And from my experience, if you can exceed requirements, all the better, all the better. And I've seen actual examples of, when requirements are exceeded, I've seen different situations where more work was being awarded and more wonderful things were happening. So that's what I would say. You may not directly have to report to them, but I would still say it encourages you to follow the steps as a guideline, to safeguard yourself and your company for sure.
Yeah, and I
Love
think
it.
I'd like to add one more thing. Just, it's really important to know what's in your contract, and that, that's going to really drive what you have to comply with and what kind of audits could potentially happen. So it's that I would say at the end of the day, it's what's in your contract that's important.
Okay, and just kind of as a follow-up to that, I kind of have this idea that if we have, okay, so we have 16 steps, right? And let's say that we meet programmatic requirements around, let's just throw out a number, right? 12, right? I don't know what the number is. Okay. But we have plans in place to address the ones where we're lacking. Is that an instance where the feds might come in and, and beat us up, for lack of a better term? Or, issue some sort of audit findings? I mean, if we've got things, planned out, we recognize the situation, right? And we're trying to put things in place, but we can't boil the ocean. I can't do it all at once, right? Should we just not get any contracts or any grants until we have everything perfect?
No, I would say no, absolutely not. And I'll tell you
Okay.
why, for a few reasons. So, number one, when it comes to, I'll tell you this in my experience. So, I worked also for Regional Transportation District. I was a compliance manager there, and we had an FTA audit. So, a very similar situation where there were things in our agency that were meeting pretty well, but there were some areas where we were a little behind, So, one of the things we did, and hopefully this is helpful for you, is when we knew of that, communicate with your counterpart. So, whoever is overseeing your contract, send them a message. We've had to do that numerous times, and I tell you what, they really appreciate that because I've seen situations like this come on a time. If we've communicated these things ahead of time, come on a time, they're not as hard on you. They recognize you have certain things. I would say there's a term called good faith effort. So in terms of good faith efforts, it's really your demonstration to prove, hey, we are really down with these requirements. We really want to do this. Here's some of the challenges that we have. Here's some of the steps that we've already taken, and then what can you advise us on? And I guarantee you, from my experience, what I've seen, a lot of times they understand that and they're not going to be as hard, And if even if there is an audit fire, they give you time to rectify it. And sometimes, if you have a certain plan, at that moment you can share the plan that you have with them. And they'll work with you. I've seen that time and time again. Even after I left RTD, I had a manager. They actually called me and thanked me for helping them to build certain files because we had some audit findings, especially with there was I'll give you a quick example. So there was a contractor we were dealing with that had numerous prompt payment violations, so many of them. It's so unfortunate. But we had that was a huge audit finding. So that's an example where we showed the federal government, this is the steps we've taken, we've done this and this and that. So when it came to the audit, they were like, okay, we see that you're taking the positive step, we see that you're doing this and that. And they usually resolve itself in that regard. So if you find situations like that, just don't feel free to contact them, let them know what you're doing, keep documentation. Like I've said, document everything to show your good faith efforts and the steps that you've already taken, positive steps you've already taken to help resolve some of these things. And you should be fine for sure.
Okay, and that's heartening because that's how I am recently into this position. So, but that's what I used to counsel, my clients on is just be upfront. I mean, if you see something heading in the wrong direction, whether it's a programmatic trend or some metric that's going out of whack, just figure out what's happened, what your plan is to address it, and then take that to, DOE or whoever it might be and ask them, here's what our plan is to address this. Here's what's happened. We understand the situation. And what do you think of our, our process improvement kind of thing? And I've always gotten great response from the feds, but I haven't dealt with OFCCP either. So that's
No, it sounds like you're on a good path. I mean, they really appreciate that because it's better to do, like you said, be upfront with everything and, show them their plan versus audit day. They're like, well, you had our number, you had our email, that sometimes that happens. So you're definitely on the right path with that for sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to have asked so many
Oh,
questions.
no, appreciate it.